Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. On this sort of brisk summer night, California is now going to 80 during the day and 60 at night. Such an interesting experience coming from the Midwest. So this episode would be like a great last scene of some touching television show or movie, where perhaps the main character is desperately trying to change the world and doesn't understand the dynamics of that process, and then bumps into a wise old soul at the end, perhaps, and that's just probably someone who's older. And they say something absolutely profound in a single sentence, of which I probably can't do on my best day. But it gets the younger person to understand, you just can't walk around changing people. There's all kinds of approaches to that, but here's the value of this episode if I do it right. We are in a phase of human history where minds need to be more malleable. They need to consider things. It's not that necessarily you're going to go from believing B over A or A over B. Probably the most valuable thing right now is to take a step back from all things, depending on how long you've been trying to do what you've been trying to do. For instance, if you have been what we typically call a person who seeks the truth, then you changed your entire habit of how you woke up in the morning, took in information to be evaluated, how you evaluated information, where you put that information after you evaluated it, and how you slept at night. But prior to that decision to pursue it, whether if you're just a philosopher in college, none of this crazy stuff's going on yet, or if this stuff where they tell you the world works this way, but you look outside and it's like, no, it doesn't work anything like that. And all those people you say care for me, they're trying to hurt me physically with mandates and stuff. Those aren't my heroes. Those aren't my saviors. But now think before that, you're the ball in the pinball machine. The bumpers, the flippers, the kickers, someone tilting the machine. You're just subject to whatever was going on. And you're just simply trying to survive in that machine. And the second that you gain a sentient click, the switch gets pulled inside your mind, all of a sudden the mag thing happens. And the ball just goes boom, right in the center of the playing field in the game. And then you get to decide where you go on that board, whether or not you get kicked or bumped or flipped. Whether or not you go down that little chute and you pop out and a little lumberjack goes across. And you went on your own journey, didn't you? You asked a lot of questions. You did a lot of research. You got misled. Then you corrected. Maybe you found some resources within your own friend circle, family circle. You started validating information. Maybe you realized that your past is full of a bunch of empirical data that you can trust. Because the world wasn't being as instantly revised as it is today. For those newcomers, you want to go see an episode I did called History is the Matrix. And it's all about the fact that since history is written a split second after it occurs, it's being revised, changed, and if nothing else, that is creating the matrix, the false reality that you believe you're living in. And no matter how good you are, because you can only get partial data about what they're doing, getting a complete picture of the world is damn near impossible, isn't it? If you get into relationships as a kid, you'll undoubtedly have a relationship where you try to do a fixer-upper. And you get someone who's not like you at all. And you think, I'll just change him to be like me. Or to like what I like or whatever. And then you find out that doesn't work. And then a wise old soul says, you know what? You can't force people to change. They have to want to change. And then magic can happen. It kind of bums you out at first. You're like, okay, all right. So now you just got to up your standards. Stop trying to fix everybody. And you find someone, you figure out basically how to find more compatible people. You spend a little more time finding out who someone is before you let your heart, either one of your hearts, get wrapped around each other. But man, when it clicks, it is fairly quick, and it is magical, and it can last a lifetime. But this episode isn't specifically about relationships. I'm going to tell you up front what I think the secret is about changing someone's mind. And it has to do with varying levels of, I would say, insecurity about how they perceive the world to work. What does that mean? They've realized the world isn't working the way that they were told, but they've been really quiet about it. They're trying to figure it out on their own because everything else in their life, in their little circle, they're able to control. And that's something to put a little pin in your head. You can control virtually everything that's going on in your circle. Never forget that as chaos starts to overwhelm you from time to time. It has nothing to do with some, hidden government going against another government. Nothing to do with that. It could just be, we could be in the best euphoric moment of a utopia, and you still are going to get challenged here and there, and you just say yes to everybody that you know, that you'll do work for them, and boy, you'll be overwhelmed really fast. But have some kids and take a new job and whatever. You feel me? But a person who is a little bit lost inside their mind, let alone terribly lost in their mind, are very susceptible to hear new concepts. Some of them will give you the most incredible poker face across the room the entire time you are speaking. They will never let you know that you just changed their lives. Not that you're trying to. And they'll leave and they will go research, and maybe they come back to acknowledge that the conversation you had or the one that they witnessed you having with someone else provided a profound re-engineering of how they woke up in the morning, lived their day, and went to bed. But the basic story archetype would be someone who was hungry, who needs food. They're coming to you serendipitously in most cases, meaning you just accidentally meet them and you're talking about something. And it's in my circles, especially in smoke lounges where we smoke cigars, we're already having a conversation and someone else is like, oh yeah, what about that? Yeah, that's really weird. Yeah. And then they listen. And when they hear two very civil human beings dialogue about the details of the world at exhaustive lengths of detail, I mean, at our lounge, I swear to God, I would be shocked if there was one more lounge in the United States that has a more informed group of people showing up, seeking answers. Some guys will not show up for 2 weeks, and then they walk in the door, lay it on me, guys. I mean, they're literally walking in the door. Great to see you. What's new? Fill me in. And they've been paying attention as well on their end, and they're pulling in data that we haven't necessarily captured. It's a very cool thing. What's interesting about it is that we have a very mixed race group of people. And so the fun thing is we'll get some outsiders because we are Huntington Beach, so some people come around to this area to vacation. And they'll step in, they'll sit down, and looking around, they're like, okay, well, there's not any one race in this room. And so they sit down and they're kind of careful, and then we're always watching something. Sometimes we're watching F1 or some funny videos, but, sometimes we're watching the heavy stuff. And they're a little cautious to say anything. And then they find out, oh my God, I was told this is an area of the world where people are racist and all this other stuff. And then they're like, my God, this is just like home, People treating me correctly. And there's no overcompensating for racial differences, right? Someone's not looking at an Asian person and going, I really like Chinese food. Or you look at a black person and go, I like P-Funk. It's not happening. We're just chilling out. We're human beings. We treat each other right. So one reason why I want to make this episode is I have seen this so many times. For friends of ours that come into the lounge that love us, right? But they're not interested in anything. Maybe they have no clue that anything's going on in the world. It happens all the time, right? They have no clue. And so we kind of, have you heard about this thing? Oh, yeah, well, that's really weird. What is that? Or, nah, I don't even pay attention to that kind of stuff. Now, if someone's not interested, we don't do anything. But most of the time they are. Most of the time they're like, all right, tell me a good conspiracy or something, right? And there's so many fun ones, right? And so we have a lot of fun. We have all the photographs on iPads and computers and phones and websites on the TV. We have, we're getting more and more folks who go there have their own channels on Rumble. Obviously, I have this one. But there's all kinds of books about, getting buy-in from your business partners, from your employees, from friends. And they try to break the process down. And from a business standpoint, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different dynamic, I should say. Usually the formula goes something like this. You wouldn't want to change if you didn't think something could be better, which means there's a state change that if it occurs, if you can change everything over to this new way, the old way is going to look less appealing. In a business sense, it should be less profitable to keep the current way and more profitable to get the new way. Either by expanding customers, sales, or both, right? So typically the business format is illustrate the problem very clearly. First, what I do is I say, look, obviously we've succeeded to get to this point, but that one area that we're all kind of like feeling weird about, and you illustrate it, and you really put a fine point on it. Then you go, well, I was thinking, let me know what you guys think, and then you go through the plan B. You talk about the transition of it too, right? You talk about I think maybe a year from now we can have this done, or maybe even just 2 weeks to get this done. I experienced this most in my early life when I was a director at Electronic Arts, and I had this 50-man team, plus or minus 10, who would come in for consulting. And I had organized the department before we were building the gigantic EA.com, because we already had EA.com, but this new one's going to be an online gaming platform, all this other stuff, all these different channels and a partnership with AOL, which was like 9 other companies. And so I knew how to run these departments, and a bunch of VPs who, before I sat in secret sessions with them and taught them how the internet actually works on a mechanical level, they kept coming up with these, I don't understand how that works, so I needed to change it to my way. And so they'd rethrow the company and how the pipeline of resources were going to be assigned to a person who needed a website, needed a product, right? And so we started off with our default way of running the department, which ran perfect. Then we had to do what was called the matrix, which was cutting things into columns and assigning, teams more stringently. And then we had a third one, which I can't even remember because it was so stupid. By that point, we just said, if anyone asks you how we do it, just say that word, but we're going to keep doing it the way we do it. We never failed. We absolutely never, ever dropped the ball. In fact, we had to do other departments' work a lot. But I had to sell this to 50 people so they wouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, here it goes. Everything's going to go upside down. So I sold them the way that we were doing it. Then I sold them the new way, and I knew that 90% of everybody in the audience, because we had so many people, we had an auditorium to have our meetings. I also brought cookies and drinks and auctioned off free games. We did a raffle for free games from the company. Because I got every game for free as a director, and I wasn't going to play them, so I just, it was like shooting T-shirts out of a gun, right? Because even if someone grabs the game and they don't want to play it, they give it to a family member, and they're a rock star, right? So I put a little bit of incentive in there, make the room smell good and feel good. But what I did was I said, look, this new way doesn't change how we do what we do, obviously, right? We need to give the impression for sure that this is the way we're doing this. For maybe big projects, we go ahead and, really assign folks, but that's nothing different. So what I said was I sympathized with them. I illustrated that this is just a formality by people that don't know what they're doing. But then I assured them that we're just going to keep doing the excellent job that we're doing. And so I had to have 2 of these meetings because, again, we had the first one set up, which is organically inherited, and then 2 specific meetings. By the time we had the second meeting, it was a joke. It literally, I pitched it as a joke. I'd make these funny ass presentations because it was all about the Matrix. And, the Matrix movie was only a year old at the time. So I'm cutting and pasting all these, scenes from the movie in there and just sort of poking fun at the people trying to change our department that had absolute no operational flaws whatsoever. So the second one came around, and again, I forgot, I think it was called Siloed or something like this. And I just explained to everybody so that they could have the conversation with someone who was really bought into the paradigm, which none existed, by the way. No one ever came to the department and said, prove to me you're using this new method. It was all BS, but it was my responsibility. So I taught everybody the lexicon, what to say, that kind of thing. Again, it never happened. But now let's move into the 21st century, a couple decades here, like we are now. And it's starting to become real important, isn't it? The interesting distinction with this last year and a half, especially the last year, is that people are making decisions that are going to potentially change their lives forever. Potentially shortening their lives. There's plenty of people missing off this planet right now due to a choice, that's being pressured on people. There's a whole bunch of evil coming if we don't make a change. Just do the math. All sold to you is this Robin Hood thing, right? Climate change is about depopulating the world. Drinks are all about depopulating the world and genetically engineering everybody. They're going to, it's already started. The President of the United States currently right now is trying to, with all of his power and all the agencies that are loyal to him, they are trying to destroy the United States of America as quickly as possible. It's just the truth, right? I am in a very fortunate position to have lived virtually every dream I ever imagined. And I'm still fighting. I'm still here. It'd be easy for a guy like me to walk away and say, I got mine. Yeah, good luck, kids. But I plan on living as long as I can. And I want to make sure that these innocent children live healthy and can live in a better world than I grew up in, which was pretty damn cool. But we're all going to need to get on the same page, which means a bunch of minds have to get changed. Now, what's strange about this whole drink thing is that, one, it seems to almost beautifully, and this is a morbid detail, it beautifully targets the most gullible non-thinkers in the world, and except for the children. The children are being deceived. The children are being lied to. The children are finding out whether or not their parents have any decent DNA in their head. And they're going to pay the price for their parent being weak, for them allowing people to tell them what is good and what is bad. And the sad part about it is that, like I say in several shows, every human being on earth should be able to trust every other human being on earth. That should be the way we do what we do. But it just took a few greedy, evil motherfuckers to teach the gullible that that's the way you should live your life. And then it spread like a disease, right? What's really strange about it is I think to myself, why did I not gravitate long term, at least? I was a little shoplifter when I was a kid, a little vandalizer when I was a kid, but why didn't I stick with all that? Why didn't I stick with all the bad habits I had when I was a child? How is it that I pulled out of that mess? And, it's funny, I think about family members of mine that I know have done stuff no one's done anything horrible in my family except my cousin. He should be in jail. Attempted murder stuff because he's an idiot. Not with any guns or anything, but just doing stupid stuff. He did go to jail, but he did the HBO jail on weekend for a bunch of vandalism and he got caught. But now, why did he do what he did and I didn't? Why are you good and someone else in your family or friend circle isn't good? Why do you have a friend that's totally greedy and then you're not greedy? If you like them, how are you not like them? You know what I mean? And the only thing I could say is that, you know, what I told you guys, I stole my last thing in Massachusetts. I stole some C batteries, double pack of C batteries. I don't even know what it was for. I can't remember, maybe radio or something. But I walked out of that place and I felt like the story of Saul in the desert. A beam comes down from heaven and anoints him with all the knowledge of Christ and the way it needs to be. And he is sent off, changing himself from being the serial killer of Christians to being the evangelist of all evangelists post Christ's death, right? I had this moment, not that biblical or anything, but my heart definitely got a message from the outside world. And it could have been my grandfather or someone who was already passed on the other side. But the feeling was this. I mean, the statement felt like this. It goes, all right. You've had your fun. Now knock that shit off. This is not what we do. You need to, live for good. And, there's definitely infractions along the way where I made bad calls here and there and did things that, said things I shouldn't have said and that kind of thing, being too impulsive as I'm learning how to put a pause in there. And, learning to put some circuitry between my brain and my mouth, some logic circuits. And for the most part, I've definitely been around some guys that were amazing. And the one I've had where I had a friend that was abusing women mentally in a really bad way. His whole thing was to date him, get him hooked on him, and then he'd dump him. And he loved that begging for him to come back thing. Crazy. A lot of other unethical things. But I got him in my circle because another close friend of mine who has fantastic morals, perfect morals, was in love with this guy. I mean, he's not sexually, I don't think, but he just, boy, it was weird. He would just give this guy money and I don't know, man, it was so strange. But he's married with kids now. And so you'll inherit these situations. And so you get to see the dynamic in your life, right? Haven't you ever heard the line spoken? If you didn't say it yourself, you had it spoken to you, or you've heard it around you, and it goes something like this. What would I have to say to you to change your mind? What would you have to see to change your mind? Now, that's a rarity in life, that you would have anyone that would sit there and listen to you to get to that statement. And that's a sad little thing, right? They give you some parameters. Now, I've tested this out with some raging, do no research, know everything liberals in my family, and they reneged when they saw what they said if they saw, they would change their minds. What is an evangelist in general? Well, there's two types of evangelists that I have discovered in my lifetime. There's a person, was a Guy Kiyosaki. He was the sort of Apple evangelist way back in the 80s, and he'd just go around and show the computer off and live by example. If you liked what you saw on stage, then that was for you. But if you didn't, you went off and got a monochrome PC with no graphics card. Okay. Well, hey, at least you saw the option that you could have a graphical user interface and some cool stuff going on. Faster processor, all that good stuff. Then you have the evangelist that knocks on doors. And they are definitely trying to spread their message. And at that point, you really have two intellects that will do that. You have the friendly people that will just simply tell you about what they believe. And they'll ask you if you're interested. And in rare cases, You'll have the evangelist that knocks on your door, tells you what they believe, and tells you that if you don't believe what they believe, you're going to a bad place. Manipulative fear-mongering. But there is no more evil in a human being than a politician, especially a career politician, who lives to dramatize their desires inside sheep's clothing, right? There's a big wolf in there. It's a Trojan horse, if you will. And they will button something up with a really pretty name. They will lie through their teeth at every stomp about what this thing is. And then you pass what you think you have heard, and it's nothing that they said it was at all. They get rich, literally, and you get poor. You lose opportunities in your life completely because of what they've done in some cases. Remember the healthcare thing. Keep your doctor, pre-existing conditions are covered. That thing turned on. Oh, it's called the Affordable Health Care Act. Hilarious. I got friends in Texas who incurred a quadruple exponential of their premiums twice, to the point that a mother, father, and daughter, all super healthy, all under 50, were paying $1,500 a month for health insurance. No pre-existing conditions. Now, at one level, you just go, well, if you're dumb enough to pay it, well, you should lose your money, I guess. Could be some people's attitude. As far as pre-existing conditions, well, I immediately had 2 friends who couldn't get it because of pre-existing conditions. Everybody lost their doctors. All right. Lies, 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 lies. Now, what's interesting is that in my current life right now, there was a tiny little tax hike in the previous president's portfolio of things. It was only 4 tax brackets went up. However, in those richer tax brackets, they move property, they move investments. And so what happened was the amount of money that they could make through those investment vehicles more than doubled in most cases. And so the theory was, yeah, you'll pay a tiny bit more in your income tax, but you're going to be able to roll over capital gains and make a ton of money. Get taxed less. So one of my buddies, his girlfriend, got that little tax hike. And boy, it was all about how bad the orange man was, right? And now she is about to incur the largest tax hike she's ever incurred in her life. In her life. 6 decades of life. She's about to see what being ignorant in the world means. And the thing is that if we're talking about changing minds, the problem there, okay, and they stole it, so there's nothing that a vote would have done, right? Now that person feels like a tool and won't admit it. And what does that do to your insides? What does that do to your insides? What do I always tell you on this show? You're only good at what you do. So cognitive dissonance is now growing in that person's body, in that person's mind. What else about life is going to go to the wayside because, hey, I'm really good at lying to myself? I mean, I lied about that gigantic thing, losing tens of thousands of dollars in taxes and current day hikes that are coming, right? Inflation's coming. You know, inflation, I want to put a fine point on it. It is sold as the end of the world, and it is not the end of the world. Would I wish it on our country or your country? Hell no. But let me just give you a little heads up here. So we print more money than we should. And so products cost more. It takes more of those little units to pay things off. Now, there are some countries out there, it takes billions of dollars to buy a car, right? There are countries like that. But let me give you the idea of some of the benefits of inflation, and we'll get to what it talks about, because we're just going to digress here for 1 second. Then my neighbor right there, I can see their house. It's about 30 feet from me. They paid $36,000 for that house in the early 60s. That house is comfortably worth $800,000 right now. So due to inflation, they're going to make about $750,000 off that house in cash if they sell it. And that's really if they get a low bid of $800,000. They could get $1 million for the house. So that's the benefit of inflation. The temporary adjustment phase that is not pleasant is that products will cost more first, and your salary will stay the same for a while. But eventually, everyone in the pipeline is affected. So all those salaries start to go up, and they go up because of one category of employment. The badasses of the world tell people who want to hire them, yeah, I ain't doing it for that much money. Are you fucking kidding me? You seen inflation? Yeah, I know you did $120,000 last year. It's $150,000 now. If this shit keeps going, it's going to be $200,000 before you know it. So if you want my resource, you better cough it up. And that's the way that the companies start to get out of their cognitive dissonance with how lowball they can make something. But then again, it's all relative. So that 150 is exactly like 120. The company is charging more for their products. Inflation. And inflation is also a big mental thing too, on one level. One of the stupidest things that you could say maybe the good guys are doing on social media is that say that someone says something that's alarmist, alarmist. It's something that literally, if those words are heard by certain people, it will cause chaos. It will cause the mob to go nuts. But what do these geniuses do? Because they are so addicted to having a reaction response from people, that's their endorphin. They carry that news straight to their conservative social media accounts and push it out there. Because they're so smart, they brought that craziness out to everybody. Then people see it. Then people believe it. Then people react to their beliefs. And they are responsible for crashes in stock markets, inflation, everything. So make sure you think things through before you keep carrying it through. For instance, I don't want to ever see Biden talk. Personally, I don't want to ever see him talk. You can tell me what he said. I don't want to see, I don't need to know any more about that guy. He is absolutely the biggest traitor this country has ever put in office in the history of this country. I can prove it in a court of law. I don't need to hear from him anymore. I don't need to ever see some mass media news talking. And I don't care who it is, man. I don't need to see it. You don't need to tell me how bad the drink is. I mean, you could have 10 more things you discover about the drink that make your nuts drop off. I don't care. What I already know is all I need to know. It's fatal. It sterilizes you. It's killing babies. It's killing young kids. That's all I need to know. What do you need to know? What else do you need to know? It needs to go away. That's it. But let's get back to the charter. Changing someone's mind. Well, it's funny. I used to use the analogy and say, everyone's a snowflake. Problem is that now means something completely different, doesn't it? Now we can say most people are snowflakes. But the snowflake analogy means, obviously, that people are unique. Everyone is unique. There's that old saying that says, if you see someone out there driving badly or acting mean in public or something, mine is abusing someone, they're just all by themselves, making the room stink of tension. A wise soul might tell you, well, they're probably having a really bad day. And there's probably nothing you can do to make it better. I mean, you can try, but you need to prepare yourself. You might go in for a hug and you might get knocked out. You just don't know. You might get shot through the chest. Who knows? Be careful. Trying to heal the world that way. So that's a nice sort of maybe skin deep massage with the concept. Yeah, they might have a really bad day. And then there might be people who've had really bad lives. And just like the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas, he goes in to get breakfast a few minutes too late at a McDonald's, and they won't turn those ovens back on and get those old ingredients back out of the vacuum chamber and give him his food. So the dude goes nuts. All right. You're trying to change someone's mind. I will tell you that if I were to try to do this in a small town, it might be easier because we all grew up and had the same exact life, for the most part. The other benefit of a small town is that you hear all the dirty laundry, and you were just organically there when someone lost a brother or sister early in life, or someone got ill, and so you just know their life story, and you have compassion, and you have the proper compassion, the proper empathy for their situation, and so you could know, like, don't talk to Bob about that. Don't talk about alcoholism to him. You know, his mom shot herself because she was an alcoholic. I mean, he's like, don't do that, right? But in a big city, it's a little bit different. Big city, you don't know anybody as much as you might know them. And I live in like a moderately sized city, right? But we have people walk in to the smoke lounge, which sometimes I'll actually cover for my buddy who has to go deliver some stuff for his other business, or he must have visited a friend or something like that. And so I covered. And so we have people come in the door. And of course, they're kind of excited to come in because they're going to get a cigar. Now, I'd say 8 out of 10 leave the store with the cigar and go home. And out of those 8 out of 10, a lot of them are tourists that are getting back to the hotel or whatever, wherever they're staying. But those 2 that sit down, it's an interesting thing. You let them sit down, and this is all part of getting to know someone to understand whether or not you have an opportunity to impress upon them anything that they might want to know or things that you think are important. But they sit down, and you kind of watch as to whether or not they're going to crawl into a telephone or whether or not they want to have a conversation. Maybe they just want to watch TV. So you give them a little bit of breathing space. Now, if in the time they walk into the front door to the time they get their stick and sit down, they're super chatty. And they're asking you questions and about the surroundings or whatever. Because we usually ask people, are you local? Because we want to come back. So get a little bit of metadata as you're setting up the sale. And then you charge their card or whatever. And then they sit down, they cut it open. And as soon as they sit down, we obviously want to make them feel welcome. Because it's fun to have a new face, a new brain, a new soul. To sit and experience, right? Even if we're just playing dumb videos and making people laugh in the room, it's fun. It's humanity. It's beautiful. You could be any color, any shape, any gender. It doesn't matter, man. You're welcome, right? So you, in a big city, you start to realize, okay, especially if someone comes in is not necessarily looking native to America. We have Arab princes coming in. So from time to time, we have lawyers from New York come in. We've got politicians that come in. I mean, we've had Shaq come in and sit down and do a hookah once. So, you know, you get random folks like that. But when you don't know exactly who they are, but they have an accent or something, and we just start digging in, and, you know, it's like, hey, well, where are you from? You know, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, everybody's loving those answers. And so the more you know about the climate of the world in different regions of the world, imagine we had a guy come down and say, I'm visiting from Iran. I'm visiting from Israel. I'm visiting from Pakistan, Afghanistan. I mean, we've had virtually all major areas visit. Beirut people coming in. We have a guy that comes in who's from Beirut, Lebanon. And boy, the stories you get are tremendous. And what's interesting is, you know, I don't think anyone really in our lounge is sitting around going, man, we're going to change everyone's mind. Nah, we don't have any energy to do that. Sometimes things are hot. I would say in the last 3.5 years, as we were trying to unravel that guy online, that's when we were really like, okay, if you're going to be here, we're ingesting this stuff 12 hours a day on a short day. So you're going to see a lot of this stuff. So if you're seeing this, I don't want you to be confused while we're watching a television show on YouTube where it's just text messages going by, these posts and all this weird talking and stuff, right? And of course, there's things that are fatty, you know. Like, flat earth comes around and goes around. Sometimes, NASA gets picked on. It just depends on what's the trend. So before we dive in on anything, let's say a guy seems to be pretty interested in some new stuff. They're going to sit down and smoke a stick for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Maybe they go get another one. They have good experience. Getting to know someone is huge. Taking into account where they're from. One of the funny little things about that show I mentioned from time to time, What's My Line, that ran from 1950 to 1968. Probably the most famous game show in American history, which nobody knows was around. They're doing 20 questions to figure out what someone's work line is. What's your line of work? And so sometimes they'll say, they put the name on the board, and then John Daly goes up and says, where are you from? And someone will say, Milwaukee. And so they'll sit down. And then, Bennett Cerf will go, if you're from Milwaukee, there's a beer company there. Would you have anything to do with beer? Now, it'd be silly for them to not see that ahead of time. They usually do. But you see what they're doing. If you watch the show, you'll see them trying to get to know people to see if they can erase whole lines of work. They'll ask if you work for a profit or nonprofit company. Nonprofit is military, state level stuff. Profit means, something really cool. So that's the big, big, big dynamic that I don't think people do very often. They just go barreling into conversations. Now, the exception to that is, let's say you're at an event, and that event has a charter. It's pro-life, pro-choice. It's a chemtrail meeting, whatever. When you have what's called a qualified audience, the qualified customer is someone that purchases the product that you're selling, and they're interested in potentially changing because they don't like the pricing, they don't like the service. They're moving, they're establishing. They need product, and you sell that. It's a qualified lead, right? So when you're at an event and you're with like-minded people, man, you've been there in your lifetime. It's a role-playing convention, Comic-Con. It's some computer convention, whatever it is. And man, it's just nerded out like crazy talking about stuff. Those are some euphoric experiences if you can make them happen. So starting out with the more blatant ones and kind of talking about the metadata, because we're going to get into the more subtle ones, which I think is where you are probably having the most difficulty if you're like me. Got a lot of, it's funny. I asked my cousin the other day, I said, I haven't been back to the Midwest, I have lots of aunts and uncles. And I said, how much of our family is awake? Because she's totally awake, man. She's really young and she's totally awake. She just had her first kid. Most beautiful little baby I've ever seen in my life. And she said, probably about 50% of our family's awake. And I was so shocked and so surprised that it was anywhere close to 50%. Very happy. And it was funny because I had a plan for if things went really tits up, and she has the exact same plan. We're going to go to the same place. Really funny. Same physical place. It's pretty funny. So let's say you've got a family member who, for whatever reason, is sort of a neophyte to all politics, world, foreign affairs, banking, corporations. You got some people that have never had to get a job because they're taking care of, formal corporate job, taking care of the most important job, which is staying home and raising kids. That kind of stuff can happen. And you see them going after a drink. You see them voting for the wrong people that are literally going to harm them. They're buying all the Robin Hood stories. And for a fact, it ain't going to turn out like that. I mean, it used to be that sometimes you were wrong. And nowadays it's so blatant. It's so in your face. So how do we get underneath that skin? You have what is probably, going to be written down on paper as a dissident of evil, I guess you could say, or they're buying evil and candy coating it to good. They're believing in algorithms that they believe are truth, but if they just were to observe the algorithm going from inception to its output of the function, it's not true. It doesn't add up. 1 + 1 = 3. They don't pay attention long enough to see the result coming out at the end. It'd be like, oh, if you get pregnant, you're going to have a human. And then like, yeah, of course. And all of a sudden they have like a dog. That would shake them up, wouldn't it? Hey, it's not what you think, is it? Oh, yeah, how the hell did this happen? I'm ready to listen now because I just saw something I can't unsee. The system lied to me. So the way to sort of approach this situation, if you're trying to affect change on people through probably conversation, aka changing their mind, is that you have to find the common denominators between the two of you. What do you have in common? On a humanitarian level, what do you have in common? Well, the truth of the matter is that 99.9% of the world wants the world to be a peaceful place because that reduces a ton of fear. And by the way, what is peace in this time frame? When I grew up, your neighborhood was usually peaceful. A big city, they have their bad areas due to oppression and financial issues and educational issues. It's all by design, of course. But at the country level, that's where we always know war exists, right? A country hates a country. And of course, they wrap it up in a bunch of narratives that you swallow when you're young, and then you get older and you realize, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be this way. You guys are making it that way, aren't you? Because one person's financing both sides of the game. But within a little living room setting or a backyard setting where your family might gather, and most of you have experienced this, you get into a family gathering and you look around the room and you're like, my God, that person hates everything that I love, and I hate everything that they love. But we're actually going to be okay during this wedding reception or this reunion or Christmas or Thanksgiving, which is, those are also earmarked as moments like was it Marvin Gaye got shot at Christmas because he had a fight with his father and his father shot him. And it's a point where people go through a lot of emotions during holidays, and when you're forced together and you believe different things, things can get out of hand. But if you were to sit down people and say, okay, forget all of the events going on outside this room. You say, on average, do you want little kids to be healthy? Of course. Why wouldn't I want that? Do you want them to be educated? Yeah, of course. Do you think colleges should teach degrees or offer degrees that actually turn into employable jobs? Whatever it is. You see where I'm going with this? There's a ton of basic things in the world that people want the end result to occur pretty much the same way you want your end result to occur, meaning the output of the function, put your algorithm in the front, data goes through the algorithm, and there's something spit out on the end. It's like an everlasting gobstopper machine, right? The gobstopper is the result. Y'all want gobstoppers. You're just not agreeing on the machine that makes the gobstopper. There are obviously rare situations where you can build the same object multiple ways, right? And it's not rare in engineering. It's not rare in mechanical things. It's not rare in carpentry, but it's rare in life that you can get everything to be amazing with the current snapshot of where the public consciousness is, right? Give you a case in point. I've been mentioning Star Trek a lot, Gene Roddenberry's world that he created back in the 60s, which was beautifully preserved through all the shows that they made, except for the recent one. The recent one is horrendous. But anyway, go back to the good ones. All of the Star Trek Comic-Con fans that pretty much watched the original, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, if you brought any one of those loyalists into a room and said, hey, see that machine over there? Okay, well, that machine will send you into the 24th century so that you can actually live in the same time zone as Jean-Luc Picard, Captain Janeway, Benjamin Sisko, Scott Bakula's character, his name escapes me at the moment. all those people would say yes. And I'm going to guess that over 90% of them will seamlessly integrate with that world, which is a socialistic world. And they're going to be fine. There'll be no more money. They're just going to do things all day long because they get the education that they need. The jobs are all jobs that have great purpose to society. Society as a whole has upgraded their intelligence. They've been through whatever wars it took to get there. And so we don't live in that world, do we? We don't have that level of consciousness going on in this planet. In fact, it's being injured by the day, going down at least in single-digit points every day. There's this drink going around that's supposed to keep you healthy, right? But what's funny about it is that there's a whole swatch of people who support all those agendas that we disagree with. And, they categorically don't seem like they care about their health. It's weird. So there's oxymorons everywhere. And that's who you're dealing with. So that gets us to the next stage, which is if we're to get underneath that skin of people that kind of want the same thing that you want, but disagree about how to get there, you have to ask yourself some questions, some very important questions, which is one, your life is a rare thing. Even if you live forever, and the reincarnation is definitely part of the game, let's just say, as an example, your life is still really valuable and interesting. You're never going to be this person ever again, as far as I know, with that first name, last name. I mean, imagine if reincarnation was being groundhog back into your body until you get it right. There's just so many factors, right? If your parents are competitive and sabotage your life, then you're going to have to get brand new parents. So not only do you come back, but they're going to have to come back better as well, because if they downgrade, your life's going to suck. And they should figure out how to get around it, right? So the first thing I think you want to do is what we call in business, which is the cost-benefit analysis. You're going to spend money to try and create a benefit. It's a formula, right? Is your plan changed? The way you're currently doing things going to be worth it in the end? Because if it's not, you don't do it. Let's say you can make, let's say you're making $1 million a year with your business, and you got a plan to make another $10,000. But the amount of effort to create that $10,000 is really not worth it. And if you have employees, you might shake up some of their preferences and you might make people angry or disappointed, and they might leave your company. So it's a risk assessment too. So if you're talking to a brick wall, or they're in brick wall mode where it's like, harumph, I definitely believe this way and ain't no one going to change my mind. Well, if you're looking for a fist fight, if you want to play the Marvin Gaye game and maybe get shot by your father, go for it. But nobody should do that. One of the most amazing things I've seen, well, I got a friend of mine who's got 2 brothers. And when the drink came around, oh my God, they just couldn't get it fast enough, man. And then they went into that sort of, I think, concern that maybe it wasn't such a great idea. And so there's this reactionary thing that occurs, which is to tell everyone else to get it. Now, for the random person in the world posting that stuff online, they're trying to probably control people a lot of the time. But like I said, there's a weird illness in the world that when you do something that is really bad, you don't want to believe it's bad. And so the strategy, which is almost instinctual in human beings, is to get more people to do what you do such that it's normal now. Why are they trying to make kid touching normal? Because the kid touchers don't want to feel guilty. Anyone walking up in a TED Talk and telling you to feel sorry for that situation, I mean, you can feel sorry for it, but, to the point where it's legal, they are connected in some way to that situation. Either they were molested by people or they are a molester. And they're trying to make it normal such that it will no longer be something that keeps them up at night. It will no longer be a skeleton in the closet anymore. I understand. It's a defense mechanism. I said a long, long time ago, many episodes ago, that there's this weird psychosis with being on the winning team. The people that worry about being on the winning team are typically your most low-effort human beings on planet Earth. They don't want to have to think about anything. Back in the day when it was the big battle of the operating systems between Microsoft, Windows, and the Mac OS, here I was an expert in both of them. I programmed in both of them every single day of my life. I knew the benefits of both. Mac was utterly killing Windows. Even when Windows was getting really popular, plug and play was something we had on the Mac operating system by 87, 88. But Windows actually copyrighted the phrase plug and play. But it wasn't until 2007 when I was running Windows 7 Pro that I actually plugged a computer to my network and could see the printer instantaneously without doing any driver installations. That's approximately 20 years after the company that never made it a big deal had that feature. So I would see people that were just adamant about getting Windows machines. And now Windows 10 and 11 is awesome. Windows is great now, but it wasn't so great back in the day. So don't think I'm going one way or the other. I'm switching my whole game over to Windows. And I never thought I'd say that. But I'd have people that stomp their feet that this is the machine that they want. They weren't gamers. What they're going to use the machine for is like checking email. But they also would drive you nuts if they got the machine in their house and it wouldn't see the printer, it wouldn't see their telephone, it wouldn't do this. It's like, it's because you got this computer, man, and it's not up to par yet, man. I don't have these problems when I go home. I was at a software company, slight digression, I apologize, but this is just to drive the point home. We had a 75-man team in Foster City, California. I was the IT guy. We had servers. We had servers before the internet was really popular that would wake up several times a day, call London, our main office in Sussex, and transfer quick mail back and forth. We set it up and it just worked. Sales staff got a new senior VP. He didn't like when our Mac because he never used one before. So he pretended to be an expert. Got everybody these laptops, real expensive IBM laptops at the time, like $6,000 a laptop, man. Instantaneously had to hire a full-time guy to take care of 5 guys. Then they needed another dude. We didn't have any more computers, we only had 5 laptops. Took 2 dedicated guys. It was just complete lunacy. And nothing was going to change this guy's mind because he was lazy. And that's a huge thing that's going on right now. Everything is so instant gratification that they want to just be experts because they heard that experts say this thing. There's a huge disinfo thing out there about climate change, and they'll say that 99% of all the climatologists in the world believe in climate change. Okay. Well, now imagine that climate change is a science that you don't get to get a degree in and get paid to do it unless there's a crisis inside your profession. Because prior to this becoming a big deal, there's about 6 or 7 world experts, and that's all the world needed. Just like me, the little IT guy that took care of took care of at least 75 personal computers, and then probably another 10 servers. Just me. But now say that someone believed that you were on the wrong side of the fence. They have these pre-opinions of you that you're an evil person, that you're a racist. They believe all that leftist crap that AOC pushes 24/7, right? All these groups that George Soros funds. Everybody believes everything that they say. Okay. But then they spend some time with you at a family reunion, at a cigar lounge, somewhere in public, at a restaurant, whatever. And let's say somehow they realize that you are on the other side, or they just know you and they just know you're on the other side, but you are the most cordial, polite, caring, humane individual on planet Earth, right around them. You're living by example. You're not bringing up specific issues. You're not throwing things in their face. And they're trying to hate you across the room because somebody told them to and they're too lazy to figure anything out. I will tell you that in my experience in life, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this too, it's really, really hard for someone to hate a nice person. It's really, really hard. And it's a big, big moment, which is what we need to finish on. It is a very big moment when someone actually does make a change. When they say to you, you know what, I thought you guys were all assholes. I was told you guys were assholes. I came down here and it's totally different than what I thought. I'll give you another example of this happening. OG listeners have heard this a few times. My entire life in the United States of America, it was no mystery that San Francisco, California was the epicenter of homosexuality. Whether it be male, male, female, female. That's just what you know it for. Never thought I'd live on the outskirts of that place. I didn't live in SF ever. I lived about 20 miles south in a town called San Mateo. But I did business in that area. Of course, everyone's very excited about their city and it's, their teams, the Giants and the 49ers and all that. But I will tell you that categorically, and I haven't lived in even remotely the majority of the United States, but the most homophobic place I've ever been in my life, where people said the most acidic things about homosexuality, was San Francisco. And there was a bunch of people. And I mean visceral hate. Stuff that I couldn't imagine myself saying past the age of 18, right? Where I pull my head out of my ass sort of thing. As well. Politically, people were extremely acidic. If they were into that kind of thing, they would approach you and let's say, because, I thought I was a Democrat forever. And so you get like a bunch of Democrats together in that area and they will find a way to hate each other in the room. It's nuts. Well, you don't like it as much as I like it. That one person is not good. So I hate you. And it's always hate, 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 hate. I would sit there in Palo Alto on, I think it's Palo Alto Drive. It's the big street that goes all the way through that area, goes straight to Stanford University. I'm eating a pizza. And, there's demonstrations on the street. I mean, everywhere, all the time, man. No one can be happy. And they'd walk into the restaurants, and you're just trying to eat a piece of pizza, man. And I just have this memory of this douchebag walking up to me, kind of this white hippie guy, and he is just, yeah, me. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know if I was just standing next to him on the street and I just need to take a break to give food. He has no idea. But his whole tense was the entire community in one guy. Hate, 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 hate. I can't keep my beliefs. I got to take his beliefs on. Otherwise, he's not going to leave me alone, right? And so the entire time I spent in the Bay Area, which is 12 years, I was told that Orange County, California was the Iron Curtain. And I said, what the hell's the Iron Curtain? What's that mean? Oh, they're a bunch of like racist Republicans down there. I was like, oh man, I don't want to be anywhere near that place, right? And through a mixture of events, which I am so glad occurred in 2012, I was told that if I want to stay with my kid, I got to move down. And I was like, yippity doo-dah, man. I need some beach, I need some palm trees, and I need to get the fuck out of this place, man. Where everybody is unhappy. It's almost like the requirement that you have to be unhappy. And they shit on LA like crazy. They shit on Orange County. They don't know a fucking thing about this place. I'd say to guys, oh, you hate LA, right? Yeah, everyone's plastic. You ever been there? No. Good. That's great. You do no fucking research, but you're going to run your mouth, right? Unbelievable. Can't change that dude's mind. But you know what I can do? I can insert about 450 miles between his mouth and my ears. So, again, I'm just trying to give you dynamics of the human mind so you can understand who's worth trying to change and who isn't worth trying to change. And then the examples of how people are full of shit about what they believe, right? In the Bay Area 12 years, I knew about 3 people, other than my professional friends, which I made really good relationships with, which are probably dozens of people. terms of going into my neighbors' homes and getting to know their families and stuff, there was really only one guy in the end who helped me move down. I knew him for a couple months, and he just, without that guy, I wouldn't have made it down as beautifully as I did. But so I'm in this county, and it's beautiful here. Right? So first of all, cosmetically, I'm like, man, major upgrade. Love it. 3.5 miles from the beach. Oh, my God. LA's right there. All my friends in LA, I can go see them. Well, that house I just talked about, I was in there within 2 weeks eating dinner with my buddy and his mom. Met his brothers. Met all the neighbors. Instantaneous friends. The dude lived this way actually was an expat. He was only here every 6 months, and the rest was in Costa Rica, and eventually moved to Costa Rica. But right now, I know 50% of everybody on my street. And we know without even asking, we got each other's back in a crisis. And then I start spending years here. And no one's saying anything. I haven't been in a restaurant where someone walks in yelling at me. Other than the last 2 years, there hasn't been any protests of any kind. They celebrate the crap out of America. Fireworks going off all year long. So I moved to an area in the world where I didn't have to change everyone's mind to feel really comfortable. We have a listener who's doing that same thing. He owns 2 houses, and he's liquidating one that's actually in a more cosmetically pleasing place because he simply can't. Well, he's just not going to waste his life. He's making a good decision. And the home is really wherever you are, right? That old saying is actually very, very true. My advice to you from just my brain, all right, and I'm just a dude on the internet, right, is the best thing you can possibly do is live by example. First and foremost, man, refine number one. You know, in this show, I have 3 hemispheres of operation I think you have to recognize before you really become super sentient. There's first and foremost you. Now, chronologically, you typically work first before you build a family, so work is what I put as number 2, but it's interchangeable once you start building the family unit, because the third one that you experience is your family. And a lot of times people, I think priority-wise it goes you, then your family, then your work. But a lot of people will say, hey, it's my family first, then me, then my work. And I understand that, and you probably actually mean the same thing I mean, but in my money, if you are unhappy, then the family's at risk. You're really the foundation from your perspective. You're the foundation of all things in your life. So you have to take care of number one to make sure that your contributions to your family are good. Because if you don't engage your family from the minute you create it to the minute you expire in this world, you will lose track of your family. Your kids will drift away from you. And especially if you get into a divorce, oh man, some other person raised your kids that you don't even know. You don't have any control over that kind of thing. Got to be careful. And for those of you who've ever gone through a crisis at home, even if you just live by yourself and then you try to go to work, you very well know that you will suffer at work if you're suffering anywhere else outside of work. If you're passionate about something, obviously, I think if you're listening to me at over an hour here, then you're doing your research and you're following sort of the principles we talk about on this show, which is be careful what you believe is true. Be careful what you believe is good and bad. And it's okay to have a pretty big pile of things that are still being evaluated because you're not quite sure. You just don't quite have that gut feeling that you got it all. We have an episode on gut feelings if you're interested. I think that I can say in my older age, and this is something very proprietary to all of us if this occurs to you, is that if you consider yourself to be fairly enlightened, and that would be defined by having a pretty good broad range of knowledge in lots of different areas to a very sufficient level of detail, then when you're talking to another human being, you actually have extra processors taking in the data. Like I said in a recent episode, I really read the face of an individual I'm talking to. The expression of the muscles around the eye will let you know whether or not someone's actually listening to you and taking in the data, or whether or not they're just looking at you, waiting for your mouth to stop, right? Sometimes you get really big telltale signs. We've had people walk in the lounge and say some ridiculously stupid stuff. And they're close friends of ours, so we bust their balls, right? But I've had a situation where someone, I forgot what this topic was, but they were saying some pretty stupid stuff. And so I leaned over and was trying to straighten it out. Very friendly, but they took the opportunity, the smallest opportunity, to look away. Someone walked in the room in this particular instance, and they immediately went, "Hey guy, how you doing?" Cutting, I'm right in the middle of a sentence. I'm not even saying that much. And that's my sign to shut up. This person is not a person who ever wants to learn anything new. Very, very rare in our circle, but it happens. It could also be they've had a day. I mean, I've got a buddy of mine who, I think he walked into the lounge one last times I saw him, and he just sits down and he's having a bad day. And so he and I are very close friends. And so I said, "Hey buddy, how's your day going?" And he says, "Well, I'm just thinking all day about how to kill myself." And honestly, it's not a unique statement from him. And so I said, "Okay, tell me." And he really wanted someone to talk to. But in that particular situation, it was just, he needed me to listen. He needed me to interpret what was going on in his life and show him that there is silver lining to a lot of things that were going on in his life. That, he had just kind of reached a patience pool, emptying out, and, he needed to take some time off from some stressful situations. There are so many oxymorons in the world. And oxymorons are interesting, also called double standards. And we're getting to a point now where the gaslighting, which again is someone telling you from authority that you normally would trust that 1 + 1 = 2 on Monday, by Tuesday it's 3, by Wednesday it's 4. I mean, they're polluting your brain with a bunch of contradictory things because they're trying to get you good at it. You have to resist that kind of stuff, right? I was talking to a friend of mine. I think she should write a book. She's in a perfect position. She's the exact kind of person to write a book and then tour. But writing books are no easy task, right? And you have to kind of have that little gene in you. But I said, why don't you write a book that's really talking about these double standards out there, and just say, if people think you're nuts for believing a particular way, well, let's just reveal the cognitive dissonance in those debates. Because in some cases, it's pretty crazy. And I'm just going to mention one of the examples I gave her so we don't give it all away. But I said, if you're in a hospital, ER, emergency room, and they're trying to figure out whether or not you're alive or not, what do? Someone gets your pulse, right? They either feel your wrist, they put a stethoscope to your chest. They're trying to figure out if you are alive. And that heartbeat is the way that we figured out. The whole world has been that way since I could remember, and from any documented history, there's no other technique that goes first. That's the first one. If you're to be in a car accident, and the car accident ends, and there's someone without a heartbeat in the car, you're a murderer. Whether it's involuntary or voluntary, and if it's your fault, whoever hit who, and is at fault, they're a murderer. If, for instance, a woman is pregnant in the car and both of them pass, the number of charges for that person increases by 1 because of the fetus inside the mother. Now, if they try to get into court and say, well, what is, like Bill Clinton, they're never going to get away from the charge of the baby's death. If someone were to debate whether or not that child was a living being, the prosecution would say there was a heartbeat, it was alive. We know it wasn't a stillbirth, it was alive. Just went to the OBGYN and got the sonogram, and they were coming home from the hospital and you hit them. You're a double murderer. You see where I'm going with this? Now, if someone terminates that life on purpose, whether it be the mother, 100%, mother, the doctor, and the nurses. They terminate that life. How come it's not murder? 6-week rule. How come it's not murder? And that's the world we've built. That's the world we have built. And, we're talking about 24th century problems, not 19th century and before problems, right? Or 20th century and before problems, before we had the machines that we have today and the medicine we have today to neutralize an accidental situation before it gets to that level. But there's all kinds of those issues, man. Scientists, there's that guy who has the video on YouTube with all the marbles in all of these glass containers. And what he's trying to say is, you can't move everyone out of third world countries to first world countries to fix the third world country problems. And he illustrates this beautifully by showing you one marble is like 1 million people or something. And so he goes, okay, let's just move, because the towers of third world countries that are suffering human rights issues are, 70% of the world? And so he's grabbing all these marbles out. He's like, I've got 50 million people right here. Puts it in the other ones. And he goes, you see, most of the problems are still here. And how do you solve a problem? Right? Let me ask you the question. Should we research how to fix people who've had heart attacks due to obesity and cholesterol plaquing in the chest, energy drinks and drugs that stretch out the heart? High blood pressure and low blood pressure stress the heart. Should we just focus on trying to save people and grow livers inside animals and stuff and transport them into human beings? Is that really where we should be studying the problem? Of course not. It's a systemic problem of either congenital issues that are given to you. One of the most subtle congenital things you can have is your arteries don't oscillate as strongly as other people's arteries. And so you plaque up faster, and you will have, it's when you're going to have either a stent put in your heart if you catch it early, or you're going to have the heart attack and you're going to live, and they're going to do a bypass. They're going to crack your chest and all that stuff. There's double standards all over the planet. And that has been a very powerful angle to take when trying to get people to at least see your perspective. And one of the techniques I've used in closing here is that I'll say to someone, look, I'm not trying to change your mind, but just answer me this question. And I give them the ER thing, and I give them the murder of a pregnant woman, resulting in 2 charges. I'm like, okay. Now we have the double standard, which is people having the right to take another life and kill it. Not a crime, because you have the right to do that. And then I don't want to take a drink, but I'm a bad person, right? And so you've got these crazy double standards out there. You just have to be gentle with your delivery. You'll know whether or not raising your voice is going to be effective or not with the person that you already know. But if you don't know anybody and you're talking to them, haven't you seen the protests all through your lifetime where people are screaming at each other out in the public? And it's a pointless exercise. Both people are very angry about whatever they believe in not being adopted and accepted by the rest. And they're just sitting there shouting. I'm sure it's therapeutic, but it ain't going to change anyone's mind. That's for sure. The thing is people do change over time. It just takes time. And, there's that famous scene that I talk about every once in a while. There's a few videos of the very first time that desegregation passed by the Republicans here in the United States of America, denied by every Democrat. But I think maybe two voted for desegregation. And so a black girl was getting off a bus, dressed to the nines, and going into school with her books. She looked amazing. All these Democrats in the South had lined up on the sidewalks, and they're just yelling at this girl, calling her the most racist things you could possibly imagine. But there was a famous reversal for one woman who was younger. She must have been damn near the same age as this girl when she was doing this, but she is very prominent in the video. And then 20 years later, she's interviewed, and she's sobbing in this interview that she had been brainwashed by her family and her surrounding Democrats to hate black people. And she was saying what a horrible person she was for being that way to that girl. But think about it. That was a powerful transformation for that person to go from pure evil to a godlike perspective of another human being, realizing they're human beings just like you, instead of being taught by the Democratic Party that these are animals somehow, right? I have this clipping from a news article. There was a video that got some AI description on it. I think it was Facebook, and it was some black people fighting somewhere in public, and Facebook used AI on it and said, "These are watch primates fight." Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. Sometimes the course has to be followed. They have to live out all their evil to find out they made a huge mistake. You know, there was a video recently posted on Telegram. I think I can clearly say this would be a person that would be very, very left because of her orientation, the way she decorated herself, etc., etc. Nothing wrong with that. And she's trying to, she's a dude, kind of, you know. But she's trying to say, look, I don't want to hear any more crap about this drink. I don't want you forcing it on me. My sister just took it and she's dead 24 hours later. Fuck you, she says to the camera. Every single one of you trying to push this on somebody else. My little sister got pushed into it. She's dead now. Overnight. Which, of course, by the standards of our corporations that run this kind of thing, because she died within 14 days, she didn't die of the drink. Because they're trying to change all the rules, right? People are waking up. I think in every month that goes by, this is September 2021, you're going to find that your job for changing people's mind, you're going to be the Maytag man. You're going to be sitting there checking your watch, and you're not going to need to be on duty. Your new job will be to comfort those who are suffering from massive regret. Because, hey man, again, you can vote your way into tyranny, but you got to fight your way out. The truth is coming. And it is coming in an undeniable way. It is going to be most likely through an envelope of extreme suffering for a lot of people. Both physically, due to the drink, and it's going to be, it's going to be living in a totalitarian world that's going to wake a lot of people up. It'll be too late. And again, for those of us who are older, part of it's going to be just watching people get their just desserts. Not sure what the rest of us will do if someone doesn't nut up and fix things. And I'm just going to say it again. I said it just recently. I want you to start saying this to yourself and just thinking it through. There's never a better time to solve a problem than now. It's never easier in the future. It's only easier right now. So that's why a lot of us are very frustrated with delays to what seems to be an inevitable sort of stand, like Stephen King's book, The Stand, about the devil and God going at it. The more you wait, the more the devil gets powerful. The more the devil can plan and counterplan and play better chess. Change the rules to chess while you're playing it. And that's my big concern with the gentleman who gave the 4D chess analogy, saying, chess masters know when the game is over, 15 plays before the game is over, and the only thing the loser can do is prolong the game, and the winner can only lose if they make a mistake in the last 15 turns that are already predetermined to win. The bad guys can change the rules of chess while you're playing the game, because the public This group of people that we're concerned about don't research anything, know everything, and they will go along with those changes. Because what would happen in that real life example? Two chess masters are playing, and then so the guy starts moving the queen the way the queen can't move. Starts moving the queen like a knight, or a knight like a queen. And the winner, the predetermined winner, is going to stand up and go, okay, wait a minute, this guy just broke the rules. But what if everyone in the room monitoring the game said, no, that's fine. He's beating you now. He just took your king. It's over. You're in checkmate. You're like, he's not in checkmate. I mean, I'm in checkmate technically on the board, but that was an illegal move. That's why when you have very privileged rich people trying to fight problems that have never had their fucking nose busted or been knocked out, they don't get it. They don't see that world. And the kiss of death is for them to say to you, hey, I've been able to solve every problem by playing it by the book, staying on the up and up, man, never sinning, never do anything wrong. And you're like, oh, really? Well, that's really great story you got there, bro. But those bad guys who have all the money in the world and all the control in the world, guess how they played? And guess what they believe works? Guess what they have proven to work? Breaking all the rules, changing the rules. That's how they've won everything that they have. So don't be so confident in your old game. Anyway, hope this was helpful. I'm trying to put out episodes that really get at the heart of what we're trying to do here, but really slow down time a little bit so that we can think this stuff through, because having an argument with someone is a real prominent thing in our lives these days. Trying to change someone's mind is what we're trying to do in social media and conversations with friends and family. And, you know, you have to budget your time, budget your happiness. Think about the fact that potentially you have a soul and that the game has very little to do with what you accomplish here on Earth, outside of living for one paradigm of existence, which is common law, do no harm. There was a Voyager episode, I've been binge watching Voyager, and there's an episode where the doctor, at the end of the episode, reads the decree of a doctor, the oath that he took, even though he's a hologram. But it's this elaborate, beautiful decree I've never heard before spoken, which I assume all doctors would be like, yeah, I had to take that too. But the very last thing he says in the decree is to do no harm. It was beautiful, man. And so as you are trying to change someone's mind, if you can adhere to a do no harm methodology, I'd say you're probably going to be pretty successful. And just remember, especially if you have kids, you know this is true. Your stubborn, clever child, my kid was very much this way. I'd say something that was, you know, against what she was doing. You know, I'm advising her to change her ways, and she'd harumph in front of me, you know, whatever, man, you know. And then she'd start doing it. She just didn't want to give me the satisfaction that I was right at that time. And honestly, raising a child and communicating with your friends, it's not about you, really. It's about them living a better life, being more happy on a celestial level of godliness. It is about building a world that is worth living in, that adheres to some standards. What is it? If you don't live for something, you'll die for nothing. Be careful. I know I'm preaching to the choir. But if you have any other advice, any other little tidbits, success stories where you were able to sway someone who seemed to be impossibly dedicated to the opposite of what you were dedicated to, please share it in the comments, because I think it'd be very helpful for everyone. Again, first season of this show, I said to you back in 2015, before any of this chaos existed, I said we're trying to build humanity from the bottom up, rebuild it. We got to get knowledgeable. We have to communicate with each other. We have to get our game organized at the bottom of the pyramid, and then we can blow the pyramid up in the end, right? So anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, everything's there. The URLs I'm starting to put at the bottom of the videos so you guys can get in and see more stuff. We did get a batch of new subscribers, but I am assuming that having written algorithms to do things on the web several times, as soon as I release an episode, they wake up the algorithms to erase you guys. So if you're quick to subscribe because you like what you're listening to, I'm thinking that they're probably comfortably getting rid of folks that haven't logged in a long time. They just know that account hasn't been online in a long time, hasn't watched a video in a long time. So they're just like ting, ting, ting out the bottom. But a lot of folks have come into the Facebook group and private messaged me through various means and said, I was subscribed to you and I got unsubscribed. So check out your subscription. I do post it in several places. And again, on the website, we have all the video options, which are more than one. BitChute has everything on it, man. Odyssey has a complete copy of YouTube with a couple videos I posted while we were banned. I was banned for 2 weeks from posting. They said it was going to be several months and didn't end up being that. We do have one strike for a video that was dormant and privately listed. I had taken it out of circulation. They retroactively went back 3 years, found an Epstein, in that letter video that I had retired, and they struck me for it. So they're not playing by any decent rules, right? They could just delete it and say, no, you know. So we have a lot of options there. But social media there's only 2 mass media products up there, which is Facebook and Twitter, but we got a lot of other ones. Minds.com, 107 Daily, Gab, Getter. So if you want to socialize with folks without being censored, there's more options to do that than the other options, right? We have an all-new remastered Season 1. So again, on this channel, you won't see the first 100 episodes. It's really like 101. But they're all up on the website, and they're all on BitChute. We have a store with some fun shirts. People are grabbing them a lot more often now than they used to, so that's pretty awesome. We'll make some more, make some fun stuff. Again, if you have ideas for shirts, we got shirts up there that were listener ideas, so by all means, I'll do the artwork, and we'll send it up there and get the message out. And for those of you who support me on PayPal or Patreon, thank you so much. The group is growing. Appreciate you guys so much. You make it happen in these very strange times. It's so appreciated. I can't really put it into words. But until next time, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.